Back to My Garden, episode 35.
Welcome to Back to My Garden. Discover your passion for gardening. Here's Dave Ledoux.
Attention, gardeners. Do you love perennial flowers? Get a free online catalog and 10% off your first order of bulbs at Bloom & Bulbs. I set up a link just for podcast listeners. Go to www.backtomygarden.com/bulb for your special bonus. What do you think's the hottest trend in gardening? I think the hottest trend is aquaponics. Can you really grow a massive garden powered by fish? Find out more and discover the secrets to building fish-powered gardens at www.backtomygarden.com/fish. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you listen to this. I'm Dave Ledoux, and welcome to a special edition of Back to My Garden. Today we have an incredible guest joining us from Suffolk in the United Kingdom. Michael Perry goes by the handle of Gardening Greek. He is a plant rock star. He's a British TV celebrity with appearances on QVC and BBC. He's also the resident plant hunter for Thompson and Morgan. Now, for those of you in North America who don't know Thompson and Morgan, they published their first seed catalog in 1855, making them older than the entire country of Canada. So with that brief intro, let me welcome to the show Michael Perry. Hi, Michael.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good, thanks. I kind of gave you a rough introduction. I want to get to hear your story a little bit.
Yeah.
And the listeners for sure want to get to know you. Can you take a minute, Michael? Maybe share with us a little bit about your background and how you got into gardening.
Well, I think it's kind of in my blood, and I think in life you're only ever good at one thing, and there's one thing that comes naturally, and to me that seemed to be plants, and obviously Latin names and the know-how. So even since I was a toddler, kind of gardening with my grandparents, it was really kind of the only thing that interested me and the only thing I was good at. So even, my grandparents used to have a very big garden and grew chrysanthemums, dahlias for exhibiting in local shows. And I soon got the bug from them, took over my parents' garden quite soon. And then throughout my teenage years, I was still gardening, even on the school garden, even though I was trying to keep that secret from my friends at the time, because obviously it's not cool to be into plants and gardening when you're at school. And then straight from there went to college, and then after that joined Thompson and Morgan, which I can tell you more about in a moment. So
brilliant. Now, for those of you driving in your car stuck in rush hour traffic listening to us, I'm going to have all of Michael's links on the blog. It'll be at backtomygarden.com/35. That way you don't have to try to text one-handed and take down the notes. But Michael has a brilliant Twitter, a lot of followers, at gardening_Greek. And then you got to check out his blog. He's got his TV show reels and all of his programming there. It's www.planthunteruk.wordpress.com. Now, Michael, you started at a very early age. Did you ever get to go to some of those local shows, competition?
Yeah, no, I did. And when you were a kid, there's kind of children's classes as well. And I remember there was often a class for garden on a plate. So I created these miniature gardens on a dinner plate. And that was quite fun, with little mossy pathways and miniature flowers. I kind of developed from there, and I think I started to display some of my own cut flowers almost. And for a while I got into baking as well, and I did a little bit of baking in the shows. But I was getting to lots of flower and kind of produce shows, right from a young age until late teenage years, really. So just haven't had time so much in recent years, because obviously traveling a lot for my job. So
yeah, your job is very unique. There's only a small handful of, specialists or experts.
Yeah.
What's the day like for you now? I know we're here recording this in the middle of summer. By the time it comes out in autumn, what's your life like working at Thompson and Morgan?
Well, this time of year it's obviously really sunny, so I'm spending a lot of time, dealing with the plants, because this is the time of year we'll be selecting, new petunias, new begonias, geraniums, all those bread and butter varieties, but also more unusual plants. So you've got Laurentia, isotoma. We've got some Buddleia breeding as well in our own breeding programs. And as new product development manager, I kind of coordinate all that. So I'm going out there talking to different growers, breeders, different plant suppliers all around the world, getting to know those plants, putting all the promotions together, so all the marketing and kind of the horticultural nitty-gritty. So I need to know what I'm talking about to then be able to communicate about that plant, to launch it in our mail order plant catalogues on the website, and also when I sell those plants through the shopping channels, and then different PR opportunities. And in the UK, I try and get the plants from Thompson and Morgan onto various different shows, kind of, those makeover shows some of the time, different gardening shows. Great British Garden Revival did a lovely piece on bedding there last summer. So it's a hugely varied job, and you absolutely hit the nail on the head when you say there's only a small handful of those jobs in the UK, if not in the world. So yeah, I feel very, very fortunate.
I tell my friends in North America that the United Kingdom is a decade ahead of us in gardening, if not a century in some places. You have your own reality TV shows where gardening is featured. Talk a little bit about QVC, for example. That's not happening over here, but it's a regular occurrence for you over in the United Kingdom. Yeah,
I mean, QVC is really big here, and also Ideal World. They're two channels that we do work on. And it's basically, it sounds really crude, but selling plants through the TV. So you've got, various products that are shown throughout the day. These channels are 24 hours. So it could be anything from a juicer to a hoover or a steam mop. But in our case, we're selling plants, and that is a brilliant way to do it, because you can have small video transmissions of those plants. You can also have them live in the studio, and I talk them through. And it's not a hard sell. It's more kind of a horticultural program, because I'm trying to help people understand not just why the plants are good for them, but also a little bit of the care of them and a bit of how to. And the show that we have is, probably I would say the UK's only regular 1 hour gardening show that is on weekly through the year. So we've always got a range of different plants, and it's fun as well. It's quite relaxed delivery. So yeah, really lucky to be part of that as well.
It really struck me how there's no traditional selling involved in that. You're coming as an authority figure and almost like a teacher or a coach.
Yeah, almost like we're like the product ambassadors, like the gardening experts. So we are going on there to show people, the plants, because a lot of people that would sit at home watching TV wouldn't necessarily be the people that would go out to garden centres, retail stores, and be inspired by the plants that they see around them. So it's another medium to show people plants and to show them how easy certain choices are for their gardens. So a lot of the packs we do also include the pots and the compost. So we're giving people a whole kind of package so that they can get into gardening and kind of prove that it isn't as terrifying as a lot of people imagine. So yeah, it does really well.
Nice. We have a very web savvy listener base, Michael, and I'm going to send them over to your blog. But on your highlight reel, you have a very short clip of a very expensive plant. What was the backstory on that? Because my wife couldn't believe it.
Well, it's actually, you've got two things on there. You've got the world's first yellow snowdrop, which we bought a bulb off eBay for about £700 a few years back. And we're trying to put that in production so that we can get yellow snowdrops to a wider audience. That was what we're looking to do at the end of the day at Thompson Morgan, is bring the more unusual plants that perhaps perform in a different way, in a better way, and kind of pass those on to the customer and, share our findings. But also at the same time, that was an opportunity for me to talk about Hyacinth Midnight Mystic, which was actually our biggest investment in a new plant ever. And that cost us, 3 bulbs of that cost us £150,000. So that was one of our biggest new product investments. But it's the world's only black hyacinth, and it remains the only black hyacinth even 15 years after its launch. It has some really unique genetics in there that not only give you the dark black colouring, but also a different fragrance that's a bit spicy, a little bit more nose friendly, because I'm sure, as you know, hyacinths have a really overpowering, sticky, sweet fragrance, which a lot of home gardeners, people at home, just cannot stand when it's indoors on the dining table. So a real benefit.
Wow. We have a whole bunch of listeners that just jaw dropped, Could you buy a new Mercedes or one bulb of hyacinth? That is a unique story. Yeah. Congratulations. I want to shift gears on you and talk about when, you're an expert now and you're an ambassador. Mm-hmm. Everything you touch obviously just blooms and you have green thumbs. And did you ever have a moment when you had a catastrophic disaster in the garden where things went horribly wrong that maybe you could talk about humorously now?
I think probably one of my first gardening experiences was where we'd grown various plants at school, and we'd grown some young plants of Tradescantia, the house plant form, sometimes known as Zebrina, as well in the UK. And we grew these plants from cuttings rooted in water in jam jars. So really, did a great job of it. Took it home, ready to plant it out, and for some reason I was going to plant it into the garden. Obviously, I didn't quite know what I was doing horticulturally back then, but planted it into the garden. And before I planted it, I just stood back and stood on the plant. And I remember I was only probably 5 or 6 years old, and I just cried for hours because this was my first plant that I'd grown, and I'd ever actually, annihilated it with my foot. So I wasn't too impressed. But that was probably my earliest gardening disaster. There's been plenty more since then because I'm quite a realist when it comes to gardening, and not everything goes right. A lot of plants that I put in my garden fail, but that's part of it. And I think people shouldn't be too, put off by it because everybody's got a different soil, everybody's got a different microclimate in their garden. So, plants are not always going to behave the way that you expect or the way that they say on the label. So kind of, trial and error, don't be disheartened.
Mm-hmm. Good advice. Mm-hmm. I know Prince Charles is quite a gardener, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And he's actually grown some of Thompson Morgan's hellebores in his borders. So, yeah, we're really pleased to have those there. And I did visit the garden about 5-6 years ago, and it's lovely. He's got a border of just black and white flowers too. And, yeah, he really knows what he's talking about when it comes to horticulture. And he's a brilliant ambassador for it as well.
Nice. Now, I'm going to pin you down because I don't get to interview you that very often. I want to talk about trends. I know things come into vogue, and I know things kind of become passé. Mm-hmm. What's hot really right now in the UK, and what's kind of losing favor?
I think what's kind of hot this summer is colour. Really, people aren't ashamed of having colour in their gardens anymore. And, it all used to be maybe a bit pastel a couple of seasons ago. But now people are really going out there. They're having the colours that they want to grow. They could be, bright fluorescent colours, psychedelic colours. We've got some really great new gerbras, for example, which have got some of the brightest colours you can imagine. And these are new breeds that are suitable for outdoor growing as well. So they're a range called landscape gerbras, which have got big, almost 5 to 6 inch blooms, which are great for patio pots outdoors in the summer. They'll need winter protection, but we've also got a sister series called Garvinias, which you may have across there, which are hardy gerbras, which you can grow in your borders the same way as you would lupins, delphiniums, slightly smaller flower, but you've got a lot more of those. So really, really excited about those. And what they bring is that psychedelic colour. So I think this summer we're seeing a lot of bright colours for sure.
Fantastic. I actually wrote that down while you were sharing that. Why you shouldn't be ashamed of color in your garden. That'll be the headline for this interview.
And there's a brilliant, maybe go and Google a hydrangea called Glamrock, because that is one of the brightest coloured hydrangea macrophyllars you've ever seen. And that's one that we've been selling very well for the last couple of years, because not only is colour popular in the garden at the moment, but people are starting to grow more shrubs as well in the UK. So they're kind of maybe moving away from bedding a little bit and looking for things that have got a bit more longevity in the garden. So shrubs are popular, also small trees, but also the concept of using perennial plants as bedding. So when you do that, you can actually use maybe penstemons as an alternative to antirrhinums, commonly known as snapdragons. Also, various coreopsis, gaillardias are perennials that you can use, in a bedding scheme. So you've almost got bedding that you don't need to replace it all at the end of the season. You can use it as an ever-changing kind of tapestry of a bedding scheme that's got some perennials in, as well as the annuals that are dotted around as well. So a couple of different concepts there.
You just won a fan. My wife is grinning and pointing at me because we have giant gaillardias in our garden, and she's been planning to add snapdragons next season.
Excellent.
And she's Greek too. She's an Alexopoulos from Sparta.
Oh, Okay, excellent. Yeah. We're Adamis from Salonika, so
there you go. I want to shift gears on you again. I want to talk about, because your job is time intensive and a lot of responsibility. What's your garden like this season? What are you growing that you're proud of, and is there anything that's frustrating you?
Well, my garden, I have to admit, hasn't always got the flowers I want in there because of time restraints, so it does tend to have just kind of what I would call leftovers, but actually just plants that are, excess from our trials, things like that. So kind of it isn't necessarily planned out to a T, but it's kind of got a lot of lovely, unique plants in there. And, obviously a lot of plants that aren't released yet to the public. So quite a few interesting bits in there. But it's hard to upkeep it because I do travel a lot, not just doing the shows for shopping channels, but also travelling abroad to various trade shows, also those different growers, breeders, mainly across Europe, but it does keep my schedule kind of going quite quickly, so I kind of don't always have as much time in the garden as I hope, which is why I do have a few more perennials dotted around here and there, some great Astromerias, some good Buddleias as well. We've got a Dwarf Buddleia that is bred by Thompson and Morgan, which only ever grows about 4 to 5 foot tall, so that's a really useful Buddleia because a lot of invasive, they'll self-seed everywhere, they'll basically take over your garden. But what we've got here is called Buddleia Buzz, and that's a garden-friendly Buddleia. So great to have some of those in the garden. Also works really well in patio pots as well. So
nice. When you said buzz, you made me remember, down in the United States, they're having a catastrophic drought, and all their bees are dying.
I really would.
How are the pollinators in your part of the world?
It's good. There's been some big initiatives to try and get more bee-friendly plants, also plants that will attract butterflies in the garden. So that's why the plants like Buddleia are popular at the moment. Also echinaceas, oriental poppies, lots of those. There's some great perfect for pollinators is a promotion by the RHS, Royal Horticultural Society across here, which has been really great for reaching out to the public and trying to get people to grow those plants that are going to attract those pollinators in the garden. So yeah, there's a real movement towards those again. So that's almost another trend in gardens at the moment across here.
Excellent. Let's take a minute to thank our sponsors and then come back and play 5 quick questions. Are you concerned about toxic chemicals, GMOs, and frankenfood? Don't panic. Grow organic. Discover my new resource for organic gardeners. Go to www.backtomygarden.com/myorganic. Would you rather eat a tomato from the store that tastes like a piece of cardboard, or would you love a delicious homegrown tomato? Free report reveals the 5 dirt cheap tools I use to grow 22 types of heirloom tomatoes, including my secret soil booster. Download your copy for free today at www.backtomygarden.com/free report. Now is the point in the show when we get to play my favorite game, Michael. It's called 5 Quick Questions. This is your chance to drop wisdom and resources for the novice gardener. Are you ready to play?
Yeah, no worries.
All right, question number 1. What do you think, in your opinion, stops most people from trying gardening?
Probably because it's often seen as quite difficult and complicated, because there's a lot of horticulturists out there who only insist on using the full Latin names or telling people they need to grow it this way and this is the only way to do it. But actually, if they just relaxed and kind of just did it their own way, and you don't have to know the full Latin names, you can just have a go, which is what I've been saying before, and see. So I think that's probably what puts people off, because the horticulturists that already know about it kind of make it a little bit untouchable sometimes. So that's why someone like myself, I want to make it accessible to a wider range of people. So
fantastic. Michael started at 5 years old, ladies and gentlemen. 5. Come on, have that childlike innocence. Number 2. You've learned from some great teachers. What is the best gardening advice that you've ever received?
A specific gardening advice, or well, I suppose one of the things that I'm learning, not just personally, but also through the company I work for and talking to customers, is the importance of feeding things like compost. And a lot of our customers will grow plants in a compost which is maybe reasonably priced, being bought from the big retailers, but not necessarily of a good quality. So they will grow the plants in that compost and then have a failure and then blame the plants, which is not great, for the company I work for. But also it kind of highlights to me that you do need to choose a good, healthy medium in which to grow your plants. You can't just buy any old cheap compost and expect to have those results, because the plants need the goodness, they need the food, the water, the minerals, just like humans. So it's the same for plants.
So to sum that up, you are what you eat, and your plants are what they eat. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And also fertilizers. People are often a little bit flummoxed by fertilizers, but there's some great ones in the marketplace now that are a little bit simpler. You don't administer them as often, but, the results that you see when you use a fertilizer is, astounding a lot of the time. So people, that little bit of care. And also, I suppose another one is, deadheading your plants, your bedding plants, your basket plants. If you don't deadhead them, then they're going to run to seed, they're going to stop blooming. And, to realise that is the differences that can make are pretty massive as well. And sometimes, the difference between having a disappointing garden display in the summer and having one that's going to, blow your mind. So, yeah.
I have to share a confession with you. My wife lets me make my own mistakes in the garden, and my theory is if a little fertilizer is good, a lot must be even better, like steroids. And
you have to be careful you don't burn the plants, though. Too much fertilizer will just sit there, won't be used, and will burn. So I'd say needs to be happy medium.
Oh, yeah, I'm totally guilty. And then it looks unhappy, so what do? I give it more. And I'm good at killing things in the garden. I'm still learning. Number 3. In the old days, if we wanted to learn about plants, we'd go to the library. Today we have the internet. For a novice gardener, can you recommend 2 websites that they'll find useful?
Okay, I mean, firstly, the internet is a good and a bad thing, and I think a lot of people, or some people out there who are trying to give people garden advice, might well just Google it and get the answer. But you kind of need to go to the places that are, known, trusted sources, because there's a lot of different opinions, but you want to get the best help you can. First one is obviously the RHS. So Royal Horticultural Society's website is absolutely packed with, all sorts of advice, tips, even diagrams of what to do, all that tricky, wisteria pruning, things like that. Excellent place to go for that. Also, one that I go to regularly for pest and disease advice would be BBC Gardener's World website. So that has a great kind of almost step-by-step way to identify those insects and kind of also look at, your plants and what could potentially be wrong. So, I don't know everything about gardening and horticulture, and certainly pest and disease is probably one of my weaker areas. So I am using that website a lot to kind of, learn and teach myself about it. So really recommend those 2.
Excellent. Oh, Michael, let's promote Thompson & Morgan's website too.
Yep, so Thompson Morgan is thompson-morgan.com. And on there, we've got a whole range of seeds. Quite a lot of that is sent worldwide as well, so you can hop on there, see the range. We sell a lot of plants too, but that's just in the UK. But of course, you can browse, have a little look, and see what you could have bought. Sorry.
Yeah. Hey, there's a whole bunch of people clicking right now because it's like Christmas shopping, when you go to these plant sites. That's great. Number 4, for somebody who wants to learn about plants, and they're brand new, where's a good book to start them off on?
A good book? I mean, again, a lot of the books I used when I was growing up were RHS books. Also, the kind of expert range. Don't know if you would have heard of those Dr. Hessian books. They were probably some of the first books I read, and they're available on all different subjects. And you've got houseplant expert, bedding plant expert, fruit expert. So they're really, really great place to start. So if you can find those online, maybe pick up some secondhand copies, then, they're the books that I started out on. So, yeah, really good.
Have you been bugged by friends to write your own gardening book yet?
Yeah, actually, I've got a few different ideas for writing a book, but it's kind of having the time to do that. I barely have time to write a blog sometimes.
Yeah.
But I guess I need to knuckle down, start to put some notes together. I've got probably about 4 or 5 different ideas. So, I need to think about that again.
Nice. Good. Question 5, and it's a bit of a fun one. In your opinion, what's the number one thing every new gardener, I guess, or old gardener, should try to grow next season?
Which one plant?
Yeah. What would be something that you would say, hey, try growing this next year as an experiment?
Oh, God, there's so many things. I really don't know where to start. I mean, I've talked about the gerberas. Maybe actually begonias, because begonias need a real plug, because they're often thought as being old-fashioned, kitsch, the flowers that our grandmothers used to grow. But especially in the UK now, there's a massive range of different begonias that are so weatherproof, tolerant to all different temperatures, conditions, long flowering as well. In the UK, they flower from the end of June through to September, October. And we've got some brilliant cascading varieties that are European bred, which will flower on and on and on. And obviously with begonias, they'll flower in the shade as well. A lot of people in the UK have shady patios, difficult corners. Begonias are one of the only things that will grow there successfully. So I would really big up begonias. Yeah, plant a begonia.
Begonias. And for the super ambitious, a yellow snowdrop or a midnight mystic.
Yeah. The midnight mystic is probably about £10 a bulb when we sell it to the customer. So it's a big investment, but it is worth it because, like I say, it's got that dark black pigment that you won't see in hardly any other flowers, and that really different fragrance too.
That would make a wonderful gift. Nice. Yeah. Good. Well, we've covered a lot of ground, Michael. You've been a brilliant guest. I actually want to give you the last word on the podcast today. Do you have either a pearl of wisdom or a note of encouragement for our listeners out there on their gardening journey?
Not sure I like that level of responsibility. I would say just, don't be daunted by anything to do with gardening or plants, because, give it a go, and it is so rewarding. Perhaps if you hadn't started anywhere before, then maybe sow some seeds, because even though that's potentially more difficult than planting things, it's ultimately more rewarding, and it will give you that bug straight away. So even anything from, sowing banana seeds to, something a bit easier like even cress, start growing seeds and you'll get a feel of how horticulture works at the end of the day. So yeah, just give it a go is kind of my real advice. So don't be scared of it. Don't be scared of gardening.
Thank you so very much for being on the show today, Michael.
No worries at all.
Hello, garden lover. It's Dave. All of the links, resources, and websites mentioned in this episode will be posted at www.backtomygarden.com/35. If you enjoyed this episode, please come to the website and click share and help us spread the word of gardening to more people. Have a great day and happy gardening.